All right. It looks like we are now live here. This is impromptu. Something that something that I decided that, you know what, I just got StreamYard set up and I wanted to just start having more conversations with people that are in business. And I think there's a lot of growth that comes from just a simple act of a conversation. And Tracy and I have been connected now. I can't believe, I think it's been 4 years. Is that
Yeah,
right? Was it
yeah, it is.
2020?
It has. We're working
Jeez,
on five, I think.
5 years, it's like crazy how fast this time has gone by. And we met through podcasting. It was
Yeah,
I think it was Zachary Babcock's group through podcasting.
absolutely.
And you're still you're still keeping the show going, which is really amazing.
Yeah,
With
we're coming up on 500 episodes here, right around the corner.
wow, 500 episodes. How is first off, I guess for people that don't know who you are, let's give just introduce yourself, Tracy, to the audience here.
Oh man,
And
I am Tracy Brinkman, the humble dark horse entrepreneur, as you can see down below there in the host of the Dark Horse Entrepreneur podcast, like Jake was mentioning there. I also have Your Success DNA podcast, which I started, gosh, back in 2007. So I started podcasting before podcasting was cool. I've been in marketing since I think I cut my teeth in marketing back in the 80s. And then when I joined with Coca-Cola, which is a marketing machine,
yeah,
really got into the trenches of things. And I've been through Coke, Home Depot, David's Bridal, Victoria's Secret, La Senza, and all these different companies. They market and they do their business a little differently. So I've had a pretty awesome breadth. And then obviously I got into the coaching world back in the 90s as I started coming through some things I was going through.
yep,
And people go like, how'd you get so successful at this? And, that's usually how it happens. Someone walks up to you and says, how did you do that? And then you start teaching them and they're like, oh my God, these folks need to know you too. And then the connections, like you said, having
yep,
conversations, it just starts happening, which is another one of the things I love about podcasting, especially when we started it in 2000 or
yep.
2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything shut down and we were still having those conversations. And if anyone does a podcast, everyone wants to do the interview podcast. Mine has turned out to be more solo episodes here lately, but I still have those conversations. I think almost more for myself, right?
Yeah.
How is Jake doing it, or how is Zach doing it, or how is Jane or Joe doing it? So that was a long-winded answer to your question, but anyway,
Yeah.
we can go down whatever rabbit hole we want to.
Oh yeah, I mean, you and I have always had some really interesting conversations, and which is why I wanted to get you on the live stream, because I know that wherever the conversation goes, it's going to be interesting and it's going to be useful for other people, because there's
Sure.
so much to talk about. The marketing. It's funny because we got started in 2020, or not started, but we met each other in 2020.
Right.
For me, it was fairly new because I came from the brick and mortar space, in local business. And, I sold that company in 2020, but my way of marketing, I didn't do hardly anything online, when I was growing that business. So it was all the old school way of rolling up your sleeves and going out to networking events and just talking to people. And
Yeah.
and knocking on doors. I was approaching venues, and it was mostly, just through a lot of strategic partnerships. Really, that was kind of the big leverage point for me. And I've always found to be really helpful is finding strategic partners that you can collaborate with, and ultimately kind of create a consistent stream of leads into your business through those partnerships. Right. And then you get into the online space, and it's so many things that you can partake in from social media. And there's not just with social media, then you got different platforms on social media between Facebook and Instagram and X and LinkedIn. And then there's individual strategies within each of those platforms. And then you got podcasting, and then there's YouTube, and there's all these things, and it can almost spin yourself out just trying to figure out which direction you want to go. And the thing that I've always come back to and it kind of goes back to, I guess, maybe my old school way of thinking about business is like, the more like just having conversations with people, or even within yourself as a way, like you're doing these solo episodes, it's like a way of reflection and kind of thinking through a lot of the things that you're doing. Like that's always been proven to be a good return on investment of your time is having conversations with people. And I encourage people to have, just have, like, if you feel like you're stuck in your business, like go have some conversations. And it seems like light bulbs will kind of turn off in your head and things start to unlock for you.
We did a lot of that. I was lucky enough to work for Frontgate, and for those that don't know Frontgate, they can look it up. It's one of those. It's a luxury brand, right? I mean, they sell like $20,000 outdoor furniture sets, so they have a completely different look when it comes to marketing to their audience, because their audience is at a different level. Yeah. And I think that's a key aspect. But one of the things they did really well was they would bring in some, we'll call it group of their audience. And they would bring them into the headquarters, kind of give them the dog and pony show, and then sit them down in the R&D section and just kind of say, what is it that we don't have? Or what is it that we could do better? So literally they brought their customers into their business, showed them around, kind of gave them, that, hey, you're extra special. We really appreciate you. And I'm not just saying this as in shining the apple here. They really sincerely appreciated these folks coming in and spending 2-3 days with them. And then they would just sit around a table and they would just shoot the shit and get ideas. And quite often, we had some amazing folks that worked in our product creation. But when you sit down with your customer and they say, you have this amazing hurricane lantern and we just love it. But what have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And one of them actually came up with this idea of a pineapple shaped hurricane lantern, and pineapples were a big thing. And no, we hadn't thought of that. And I'll say it was probably about 16 or 18 months later, they went through the whole R&D process and got it made, and it flew off the shelves like nobody's business. Nobody would have thought of that. And we would have never thought, hey, let's make a pineapple hurricane lantern instead of just the straight wall ones, which, they're cheaper and they're easier to do and they're easier to ship. But your customer usually will tell you what it is they want. And you might be a little bit surprised that it's not what you're thinking. It's not the bell or the whistle that you were thinking about adding on to your product or your service. And it's usually something that is so easy to do that you're like, oh no, everyone's going to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's no, I definitely do. I'm thinking back in when I had my lighting company, we had a request for a disco ball. And somebody wanted a disco ball. I was like, really? And I didn't own one. We didn't have one in stock. And I remember speaking to my general manager. I was like, yeah, so I need to find like a giant disco ball, because it's got to look to scale in a big ballroom. So sure. I think it was like 2 or 3 feet in diameter. It was big. And I was like, God, man, this is going to, like, we need to charge the cost of the disco ball plus add like probably another 200 or 300% on top of it, just for the hassle of like acquiring it and storing it. And, cause that's how we would work. It's like, if there was like a special request, and I would acquire it, but depending on like what the perceived usability of it in future use would depend on how I would price it.
Sure.
And so this was one of those things, like, there's no way this is ever going to get, this is probably the only time somebody's ever going to request us. Mm-hmm. And it was funny, like that year, the disco ball was actually one of the top requested. Like when people would come into our warehouse and do the tour, they would see the disco ball hanging. They go, oh, like we should. It's like, really? Like that's what you want? Okay. Yeah. And then next thing you know, it was like we were booking it out on jobs. And I just remember looking at my team thinking, I never would have guessed that would have been the thing. And then we would have stuff in inventory that we thought were going to be home runs. Like I actually didn't even have a client for it. Like I was like, no, like this chandelier, it's beautiful, it's unique, it's just like it could work with so many other different applications. Couldn't sell it. would
Right.
introduce it to people. Like, what do you think about this? And then
Yeah, it's all right.
where's the disco ball? Like, I need the disco ball. That's the thing I want. Like, really,
Right.
the disco ball? Okay, sure. And it's just like such an important lesson in when it comes to like marketing and sales I know it sounds really simple and it's probably I think it is talked about a lot. I see it show up in a lot of people's content. It's just a sheer act of just talking to your customers and but not just talking to them, listening to them. Like there's the listening piece, right? And so it's like, how do you, let me ask you this, like, how can you bring some intent into the conversation? Because this is the question I have for myself often, like when I'm thinking about talking to whether it be clients or even people who aren't even my client that could become a client. It's like, how can you ask questions that give you the answers you're looking for? And sometimes it's like, I don't even know what I'm even looking for, but I know that there's a conversation that needs to happen that gives me that I've got to listen and I've got to be in this position where somebody's communicating to me and through that communication, there's answers that I've been looking for, but I haven't been able to find yet. So it's like, have you ever had conversations with people where you've been intentional, maybe strategic in how you've had that conversation that's giving you the answers you're looking for?
Yeah, usually where I started off in conversations like that is usually asking them, are they using a service or product that you're wanting to get that input from, right? And usually the answer to that is yes, because you're tapping them on the shoulder and you might have a little insight. But sometimes, to your point, you're at those networking events, maybe they don't. And you still have this perfect opportunity to tap people on the shoulder. Hey, do you use XYZ type of service? Do you use AI in your business, right? And, well, yeah. Well, how are you using it, right? And usually it's a simple question of, first, you lean towards the positive. What are you doing with it? Or what has been your experience? And then they start sharing. And then you can start usually just leveraging pieces of that conversation to kind of guide it towards, well, what was the issue there? Like, well, yeah, I tried it, but I couldn't get my head wrapped around it. Well, why do you think that was? Was it lack of training? I think the key is to ask the question open-ended, but slightly directed, right? Because you don't want to, like I just started to do, drop 3 or 4 ideas and they're like, oh yeah, well, it was this. Well, now you just kind of guided the conversation. Where if it's like, well, yeah, you tried AI, but I couldn't really get my hand up. Why do you think that was? And just shut up, right? Like that great salesman tactic, right? Ask for the sale and shut up. And then just let them talk. And then you just, depending on where their conversation leads you, much like our conversations, right? We're just like, okay, well, whatever we talk about, we talk about. Start digging around. I'm going to finish that thought. But I think one of the key things I see for a lot of people where they make the mistake is they're not sincerely curious. If you're not sincerely curious in the conversation, you're going to end up guiding it, no matter what your intention is, be it completely positive or not. You got to be sincerely curious about hearing what it is they have to say, even if you're kind of bored with, oh yeah, this is the same answer I expected. Well, maybe that's a piece of data that you need to latch onto. Yeah. They don't care about anything else but that right there, the thing you already know. And that's what you should be spending your time on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's there was a podcast interview I had a couple weeks ago, a guy named Rob Rando. I don't know if he might be listening in on this because this is streaming to X. Really good guy. Connect with Rob. He's on X. He's a great guy. And he had said something on the podcast that really similar to what you're talking about that I thought was really helpful when you're having those conversations. And it was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here when I say this, but it was basically around I do website design, right? So it's like your natural indication is like, well, let me ask them about like their website design because I'm trying to figure out some feedback there. And that does make sense.
Sure.
But maybe start with just like kind of where are the constraints right now? Like don't give like don't give any like, is it website design? Because what that's going to tell you is like the thing that they're thinking about the most right now. Like that's the thing that is top of mind in their world, is like, gosh, if I can just figure out how to get my staff to like do what they're supposed to do. I don't care about more leads. Like, it's like, I'm good on lead generation. In fact, I'm actually turning people away. So like marketing is not even something I even care about. But, you know, if you're trying to take them down a marketing conversation, it's like it's not even something they care about right now. They're actually trying to fix something in their operations and with their staffing. Like that's a bigger issue. And so like now you understand, it's like, okay, well, if I'm targeting this, like say I'm just going to use this as an example because I have a dentist I just published today for the podcast. And I do know this because my wife's a dental hygienist, and I understand this about that area. Is like, as I was asking her, I was like, what do you think? Like, do you think there's like some opportunity in dentistry for website design? She's like, yeah. She's like, but honestly, she's like, we are hurting so bad right now just to find good people to work. I don't even know if there's even like much, I don't know what the desire is there for like any kind of a marketing service, because right now we got people that have to wait 6 months to even book an appointment because we're so backed up and then we can't find people. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's the big pain point. If I were somebody that could come in and help solve that particular problem for dentistry, like I'd probably make multi-millions of dollars, being able to solve that. But if I come in there and talking about like more leads and more patients, they're thinking like, okay, well, I'm already 6 months booked out. So what you're saying is, give me more people that I can push out to 9 months or maybe a year.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't like, you're actually going to perpetuate the problem that I have.
Yes,
right
please
now.
don't do that.
Don't do that. Like I'm trying to like optimize some things on the back end so I can better serve the patients. And then once that's done, then we can like maybe switch back around to marketing.
Sure.
And I had that like with my lighting business. It was the same thing. I had people that would come to me for like marketing services. And it's like, I already tell people no, like as it is. Like I don't want to pay money just to tell more people no. Like I'm trying to figure out how to scale my operation, because until I do that, it's just going to be consistent. Like it's like the service was so there was so much risk tied up into the service, which is something that I think with like startups, people who are in startups, I think sometimes people miss this part, because I've had conversations like, you got to realize, like once you start bringing on clientele, you're going to have bottlenecks that are going to start happening within your back end and your service. There's going to be things like, if you don't handle that with care, you're going to end up failing clients, and you're going to hurt your reputation, and then you're going to be playing damage control. So, it's kind of this balancing act between marketing and sales and delivery, and being able to balance that in a way where you can scale your business, and that fulfillment, that delivery piece is really important. And so just some thoughts there on that.
No, 100%. I think I think when it comes to
I'm losing you there,
marketing,
Tracy.
and sales, there's always going to be that balance, right? How full can I? Are we back yet?
Yeah, you're back. I think we're having a few connection issues.
You with me?
Yeah, I can see you. You're a little bit fuzzy, but you're good, at least on my end.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I think one of the things we need to balance is that, we all talk about the funnel, right? Everyone's heard about a funnel if they're in the online game. But I think the key is going to be is how full can you make the top of the funnel? And then as you manage each step, and it's not just the bottom, right? You've got to manage each step of that funnel because there's that whole journey. We've had the customer journey conversation before. If you can't move them along the funnel, then that's part of your problem. It's not a marketing issue, and it's not a sales issue. It's a customer nurturing issue, right? Because especially in the online world, when you're having a conversation with someone, you can gauge where they are. And you can almost, if you're, again, if it comes back to the sincerely listening, you can find what their pain point is even. And it might not be marketing. It might be the operations piece. Like, oh, well, great. I know someone that could hook you up and help you with that back end piece. I just happen to know a staffing gal who's amazing. Let me connect you two. And that way you're solving the staffing issue. And then you can loop back with them in 3, 4, 5, 6 months and say, how's your staffing doing? Are you ready for the new amazing website now that you can start, banging people out the door? But that all comes back to that nurturing and that sincerely listening so that you can say, all right, well, it's not my business. I'm a website guy, but it doesn't mean I don't know someone that can help you. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. It's there's reciprocity there's like the reciprocity piece, right? It's like I'm able, because you got the staffing person, you've got the client, and then you got yourself, right? And you're approaching this as from the angle of what's in it for them. How can I just be of service here? And if sometimes, and this is the thing too, it's like even within your own business, it's like sometimes there are people who want websites. I'm like, I'm really not the best fit for you. So it's like listening, I can do websites. It doesn't mean I'm the best option for everybody. Mm-hmm. And, and I even like back when I had my lighting business, it was the same thing. Like I would refer certain clients to my competitors because it was like, this actually, it makes more sense. But also there's times, like you said, like they're just not ready for you right now. Exactly. And there's a couple things that need to happen first before they're ready for you. And when you take that approach, like you're speaking to, it's like, okay, I've listened. I understand that what it is that you need is, you need some relief on the back end with, it's like, I can't find good people. And then if I do find somebody, it's hard to, there's some management issues. It's hard to keep them loyal, keep them long. But I do know that there's some resources out there and some other people that have specialized in this that can help you, kind of relieve the valve of pressure there. So I'm going to send you over to them, refer you. I'm happy to make a connection. And then, down the road, you can follow up with them because if things have gone well, then, certainly they'll be in a better place to maybe consider your service. And if you helped him relieve that stress, now you're trusted. Now you're somebody they trust. Yeah. And so this is the big question. And I want to talk about referrals because I think that, referrals are more, how do I say this? I think they're more nuanced. I keep saying the word nuance. I need to find a different word.
It's your catchword now.
Yeah. I need something different here. I think there's more to just referring people than what meets the eye, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Like it was, have you ever been to like a networking event and it's like, right. And it's like, you're in this room and people are like, hey, if you need so-and-so, here's my card. Yes. And they hand you a card and it's like, maybe I do know somebody who needs your service, but I'm not really sure if I want to make that connection or not. And, the thing that you have to understand is that when you refer somebody, you're putting your reputation on the line.
There it is.
And if that doesn't work out for them, then that person is going to be like, you've like burned the bridge of trust. Yeah. So follow up with them in 6 months. And if that referral didn't work out for them, the last thing you want to hear is like, you referred me to Joe on his staffing agency. He never called me back. He was, he did find me people eventually, but all of them were lazy and they didn't show up on time. Right. And there was all these problems, but I appreciate the help, referring. It's like, never refer Joe again. Like now that looks bad on me. And so there's a couple schools of thought to referrals. And I'll say one more thing too about it, because there's one thing I think that's very obvious, and there's one piece to it I think that's not as obvious. The first part I just said is the more obvious part, right? Like you want to make sure you're referring people who are competent in what they do and are going to at least show up and be of service.
Yes.
But the other piece to it that I think is missing, and I learned this through the special events industry, and it didn't really occur to me until several years into the business. I'm like, because all my business came from referrals, like 99% of our leads were referrals. That's just how it was ran.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that was that kind of occurred to me through that experience was thinking about the type of customer that business serves and making sure there's alignment there. So it's like for example, we were a lighting business. We did a premium service. Like we were a luxury on a luxury. So it's like doing a big giant wedding was a luxury in itself. Bringing in a lighting company that was specialized in lighting was like a luxury on top of that. It's like you didn't have to bring in a lighting company, but you're bringing us in because you really are putting a lot of investment into the design of the space.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would think about when I'm thinking about my client, I'm thinking there's like a certain expectation here that they have of the type of vendors that they want to bring into their event. So if I'm playing in this pool with them, then I need to make sure that, because there's people like that didn't serve that level of clientele that did good work. Like they do good work, but they're just not like there was like really like high aesthetic, high,
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I see that you're a DJ and you're like putting your vinyl banner of your DJ company on the front of the table, I'm not going to refer you to the client who just invested $100,000 in florals.
Right. No.
Because if they see that show up at their event, they're going to lose their mind.
Yeah.
And because every detail was had to be, pristine. And it's like, so little things like that. It's like, you're a great DJ, but whatever, you do you. But if that's how you show up, that's not going to work with this client. And so you got to think through kind of like the expectations of what that client is looking for. And sometimes there's like chemistry between people too. It's like some people, it's like, I just don't see them connecting very well. Maybe the personalities aren't a great match. So I think, like I said, I say the word nuance because I do think it's nuance with referrals. I think you got to think through the personality types, the match, and it's not just a black and white. This person offers this service. That's just my opinion on it. I'm curious to hear what you think.
I'm 100% on board with that. There's a whole vibe check that has to go with anything. And I think it's one of the great unspoken benefits of having conversations like this, because someone who just hops on and says, "Oh, let's see what Jake and Tracy are talking about." Who's Tracy?
We got 2 viewers, by the way. It's been hanging out.
Hey, right on. Hey, everybody.
They've been hanging out here. So whoever you are, thank you for being here.
So as they hear the chat and the conversations going back and forth, whether it's digital or in those network marketing or some meeting where you're a part of some conference or whatever, you actually, and this is my personal opinion, you get a vibe, right?
Yeah.
You feel their energy. However you want to say that, however woo-woo you want to feel that, you actually get a sense for who they are and how they come off, to your point, right? Yeah. So, Tracy has got the long beard and the whole 9 yards, and I'm not going to put the vinyl, banner in front of my DJ booth, but I might put my rock and roll guitar there. Well, that's not going to work for a lot of folks. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I'm not for that person. And that's fine, but I am for that guy who's like chilling out on his farm, and he's got his cows, and his daughter's getting married. Now him I might jam with, and we would get along great, and doesn't mean he's not the millionaire next door, right? So there's that whole vibe. Here's a great example.
I love that, by the way. That's that way you just explain it with the guitar. You got to be receptive to those details. It's so important.
It is. My daughter is wanting to get a tattoo, and we just moved to a new part of the state. We bought our little 40-acre farm up here and are loving it. So we're out checking around some of the tattoo artists, because first off, you want someone that can do a good job. That's part of it. But if you're going to be spending 3 to 6 hours with someone doing that, there's a vibe check to be had. right? And so you can do some of that by checking out their artwork online, what have you.
Mm.
And then you got to go and stand in front of the person and just kind of feel, do I like this space? Space
Yep.
is cool. Now you start chatting with the potential artist. How do I feel about you? And if that rocks, well, then you make the appointment. But each step of that along the way, you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And if
Yeah.
you don't feel it, walk away. And I think so many of the small companies as well as big companies miss this entirely because they're so focused on marketing that they're forgetting to try to connect, right?
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that's probably one of the things. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're stepping into the local space more than anything else. We live probably a little town of about 650 people, right? And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of little bitty
You only
towns.
have
So
650 people in the town you
yeah,
live in?
yeah, that's official, right?
Wow. That is
um,
small.
so it's a tiny little burg, and you walk into a shop, and everyone's like, "Hi, aren't you the folks that just bought Arnold's old place?" You're like,
Yeah.
"I don't even know you." Right? And it's
Yeah.
because, they're like, they've been around each other for generations. The vibe, I'm like, all right, this is where I need to be.
Yep.
And so to bring this back to local marketing, there's a vibe connection inside there. Yeah, it is great to have the next whiz bang thing, AI, all the fancy things on your website or in your garage as part of your shop, whatever it might be. But
Mhm.
if you miss the fact that Jake needs someone that isn't going to put the vinyl banner in front of the booth, then it doesn't matter. He's going to say, "No, thank you very much. We can be friends, but I can't work with you." Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's expectations, there's expectations that people like reading your clients' expectations of what they're looking for in a,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like these little micro teams that are created around any endeavor that you're pursuing. I mean, special events, it was, I would always sit at tables. It would be like me as the lighting guy. Then I would have like the event planner. Then there would be the florist.
Yep.
There would be and the venue manager would be there, the client, and we would all have discussions about how we would have a collective discussion about how we're going to pull off this event. And same thing with like in business, you're gonna be at that table, and there's going to be, maybe you're the website person, and you've got the person who's doing the paid media, and you got the person that's, and here's this team of people here that's all working on and collectively working on growing this company and the marketing, generating whatever. And I was actually on a call just a little bit ago with a client of mine, and we were talking about building, he's building his team, and like, here's people that we're pulling together, and I'm part of that team as far as the website designer. Right. And but I have to be involved in those conversations to understand like holistically like what's actually happening with the brand, because otherwise, like, I'm not going to be able to actually, to be able to deliver on my end and make it cohesive and congruent with the brand. Right. And so you have to so it's like when you think about the team, you're thinking about who, like, okay, there's an open seat right here, right? There's the DJ that needs to provide that piece to the equation. And you're kind of looking around the table and you're thinking like, well, and that's why I was saying, like, a lot of the events I was involved in, because we were lighting, it was high aesthetic. Like the room was, right. I mean, like lots of money went into the design of the room. That was a big reason why we were there, because they wanted to preserve the design and the details.
Sure.
And it's like, so you're just kind of thinking like, well, who's going to be somebody that's going to amplify that experience, above and beyond. Like, so if you got somebody that you can recommend, great, but just be very thoughtful about who that person is and who's going to sit at this table. Does this person fit in with the vibe that's here? And if it does, then certainly make the recommendation. And if it doesn't, that's why I've never there's these was it like these referral groups, I think?
Yeah, like BNIs or
stuff. I never did that because I was like, that's not how I refer people. I don't just refer people because we're part of a group, but because, it's like, I'm here, like, it's more about making the right connections. And, otherwise you're doing a disservice to your clients.
Well, and to your point earlier, you're doing a disservice to yourself as well as the client, because it's your reputation that's being pushed forward. You're signing your name saying, hey, this person is awesome. Go check them out. And if they're not, then it's a reflection, right? You gotta, like you said, you gotta be mindful.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big part of it. We've got 5 people now that are watching the live stream. So
Woo-hoo!
That's awesome. This is the first. I think I want to do more of these. These are fun. Like I said, I enjoy the conversations. It's good to be back into podcasting. What's been, I guess, for you? I mean, since you're like 500 episodes now, or how?
Yeah, I think we're doing like 487 right now, so it's right around the corner.
How's it changed for you, like with podcasting? Like, what's been since we started?
It's well, like I mentioned earlier, I think one of the big changes I've made is one, I do a lot more solo episodes, not because I want to hear myself talk, but because according to the numbers, the people listening wanted to hear me talk. Okay. And always pay attention to your numbers, right? That whole customer journey thing. And I started seeing that. I continue to do interviews because I like the conversations, and I think the person that I'm talking to on the other side of the microphone has some value to serve the audience, right? Which has made some people upset with me. And what I mean by that is there's some folks that come and say, "Oh man, I've done all these amazing things, and I think I could really just do something great on your podcast." I'm like, you haven't told me a darn thing you could do. Your pedigree, awesome. All the things you've accomplished, amazing. What are you going to bring to my audience? And they're like, that's when you start getting the crickets. And I'm like, okay, well, until you can answer that simple question, we're just going to agree not to, have the interview. And when you spend time building a business, an audience, a family, right? Whatever it is you're building, or a model, you want to take care of it. And I try to take care of that audience. So I've been more, my filter has been turned up high when it comes to who I'm bringing on. So that's been a big piece of that. And then the advent of AI, I resisted AI for the longest time, intentionally. First off, because I'm not quite sure it was ready for me. Then it was a little trust issue. And then I was worried about authority, my authority. Hey, if I'm getting all my information from AI, then what good am I? But I've come to a nice blending point where I can use it to brainstorm, and then use my creativity and my experience, 50 plus years around all the things I've done and experienced that it doesn't have, at least for me. And then kind of bring the meld of both worlds. And it's actually proved very valuable, because every once in a while it'll pop up an idea. I'm like, well, shit, of course. Why didn't I think of that? It's one of those moments, like when you're sitting around maybe chewing the fat with a few friends and someone says something, you're like, well, shit, why didn't I think of that? I'm even better at it than that person is, so it can be a good tool. It's like any other tool, right? Sometimes people are out there abusing it. Sometimes people are avoiding it. And you just got to find a way to work it into your workflow.
Well, I think that's where AI has its most value is being kind of that co-pilot for you.
Yeah.
And it's not a replacement. It's there to kind of enhance what it is you're already doing. Yes. I actually used it. It's funny. I was thinking about doing some kind of a piece of content. I've been using it to help write my guest introductions for my podcast.
Yes.
So I created it. It's a GPT, like the GPTs that you can create on ChatGPT. I think it's called like Podcast Prep or something. And I just named it. And I kind of gave it like all the instructions, like, this is what I want you to accomplish. Cause like, I want to create these introductions. People will send you their bios and stuff. And it's like, it's not really like formatted well for an introduction. Right. but it
Right.
has the information I need for an introduction,
Mhm.
but it's just not formatted. It doesn't flow very well. So I've created this GPT where I just feed it the bio, and then I'll go through it. I'll like look at their website and I'll kind of do a little bit of my own research, but I just basically feed it that data,
Mhm.
and then it spits out an intro for me that I'd say is probably about 90% there.
Nice.
Like there's still like a few little things I need to go and tweak, but I think I've done 8 interviews now, and I've had several comments come up like, wow, that was just like such a good introduction. Like, it's like, yeah, pat on the back.
That's right.
Actually the
That's right.
AI is doing most of the work, but it's but if it works, I mean, it just helps. It just helped take something that was already there
Yeah.
and reorganize it in a way that flowed the way I wanted it to. But there was always like a human involvement there. Like I still had to go in and just kind of make a few adjustments to make it the way I wanted it to. And
I
also
think another piece of that I think a lot of people forget about, whether they're podcasters, and if they're not podcasters, they probably don't even think about it. But is, how do I link this person to my audience? Why should my audience care that I'm even bringing this person on in the first place?
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that I'll do a little teaser before the intro music, right? Like that 30-second spot that if someone's pressing play, that I'm going to hook you in.
Yep.
Okay. So there's no introduction there. That's the teaser, the little, hey, watch that 11 o'clock news. Right.
Yep.
16 people died. What happened? Right. So it's that kind of hook. And then there's the intro music, and then the actual introduction itself. It could be boring and bland. It's usually however they send it to you. It's just kind of their laundry list of a compliment. Mm-hmm. This is awesome. How do I weave that into a story that you care about as my listener? And for me, I try to focus on my parental entrepreneurs, those folks trying to break out of that 9-to-5 grind with a side hustle and hopefully turn their side hustle into a main hustle. Okay, so now I've got to work that into someone where someone's going, okay, you just teased me. How does this person fit into that? So I got to do that at the same time. And then you start the conversation, right? So I've been using AI as a piece of that and working those in together. And it's been working phenomenally. I use, it's actually called Poppy.ai. And it allows you to grab files. Like I'll put in all my files. Here's everything about how I talk, and actually transcripts from old podcasts, and here's what the show is about, and here's my customer avatar and listener avatar. And then I start dropping in maybe videos from YouTube where they've been interviewed before, and then their intro that they sent me. So now it's got all this baseline data. And then, of course, I give it the instruction, and it spits out an intro that usually works really well. But to your point, there's still a little tweaking. It's got to get that little Tracy flavor that the machines just haven't quite managed yet. And then the next step is give me some questions that they haven't been asked. What kind of angles should I come at from this person's experience? And if I have some angle ideas, I'll drop them in there, and then it will go through and usually it'll give me at least 1 or 2 thought ideas or questions that I would have been like, oh, wow, what an amazing thought. What an amazing train I can go on. Because as we all know, you get someone on, say, let's use someone obvious like a Gary Vee, right? He's everywhere. And if he gets on your show, he's probably answered the question 1,000 times. How can I give him a question that is relevant to my audience that's not asked the same way he's been asked 1,000 times? That way my audience is like, well, Tracy asked a question that I've never heard Gary answer before, which makes them want to listen to the next person you bring on, because while you may have heard them on Jake's podcast or Zach's podcast, Tracy always asks a question that no one else ever asks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to actually real quick, and I'm going to use the, just to pull it up here. Hold on a sec. Let me do this real quick. Poppy. Is this what you're talking about? Poppy.ai? Getpoppy.ai.
Yep, that's the one right there.
Got it. So this is a tool that you're talking about, and this is kind of the AI that you're using to
Yes.
to do everything. Okay.
Here's why what little I know, and I'm not the chat GP, I'm not the AI expert. I'm not even trying to come off like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I found out is that when you're working with a lot of the AIs, like a chat GPT or what have you, obviously it's using all the knowledge that's out there, that whatever's programmed into the LLM. And there's an acronym, I think it's RAG. And I'm not going to try and remember what it's. I'm listening to this lady, and I've been learning a lot from her on TikTok and what have you. But what this particular tool does is it takes the data and the information that you link into it, and it uses that first. Yep. And then it uses the rest of the LLM model to add on to and do the rest of the investigation. Gotcha. So it uses your linked files as the primary source and then goes out and does the rest of the information based on that. So it's kind of a different angle. And I know my AI experts out there are going, well, duh.
and this is kind of what you're talking about. Like you can give it PDFs, videos, voice notes, and then just curious, what's the cost for this thing?
I think it's like $89 a month or 2 and change for a whole year. And then you get like 2,000 what they call units. And I mean, you can drop in 4 or 5 videos and ask it a question. You use like 10.
Gotcha. I'm going to, I was just saying earlier, it's crazy how I've been on StreamYard and so many years, but just some of the added functionality, just everything in tech, everything's just gotten so much better. The tools have gotten more refined. AI is interesting. It's interesting in how it can be utilized as a tool. I've enjoyed seeing how people, like some of the use cases, and you just brought forth a really good use case around how AI has helped you, like saving time and energy, and it's like keeping you from all the little mundane tasks that we used to have to do that would really slow you down, or you felt like you had to hire somebody to kind of come in to do those mundane, or whether it be a VA, and then there's some what do you call it, some reliability concerns that can happen there.
100%.
Yeah, we could definitely jam out on AI. There's a lot to uncover there.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. So we've got about 9 minutes left. I'm trying to keep this within an hour, guys. Sure. I feel like you and I could talk for.
We could do a Joe Rogan length podcast.
I know, right? Yeah, this has been awesome. I enjoy the live streams. We're up to 7 people now. Nobody's commented though. I haven't had any comments come through. I don't know if anybody's going to be brave enough to comment that I can bring it up on the screen here, but that's okay. You don't have to.
This is number 1 for you, so you're good.
Yeah. Well, and I don't, I'm just kind of testing this out. I've really been on a kick. Like I just launched a podcast last week for Thrive Local, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning about just having more conversations. I just find there to be so much value in conversations, even in conversations like you and I, like we didn't have a pre-live, like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. I didn't even have a topic. I was like, Tracy, you want to just go live with me on Friday and just, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll just see what happens. And not having any kind of an agenda, just going into the conversation, letting it organically go where it needs to go. Some of the benefits I think that really come from that. Number one, it's like, there's things that you're going to say that's going to unlock ideas in me, or even people that are listening right now. It's like, they heard you say something and it's like, like I never thought about it through that angle. So that's going, that helps me figure out whatever the next step it is for you.
Right.
But also just like when you're having conversation, there's things in your head that you are like, does that make sense? Like in my head, it kind of makes sense, but until I actually communicate that to somebody, I really don't know. And and it's so when you have that conversation, and maybe even some of these down the road, maybe I bring on a couple people just to be able to have more of a group talk.
It's like a brainstorming session, right? So if anyone's ever had and I mean this in the real brainstorming session kind of philosophy, where, all right, I want all of Jake's ideas, and I want all of Tracy's ideas, and I want all of Joe's ideas, and then you write them all down. You don't critique anything. You just listen to each other. You write everything down, and as I'm listening to Jake's ideas, something new sparks in my head, which creates a whole new idea. And then that could in turn spark Jake and spark Joe or spark an audience member, right? And it is that conversation, unfiltered, and I'll call it unjudged at the same time, at least to the point where you're listening it from a service standpoint to say, wow, like you said, I never looked at it through that lens, and that generates a new idea. So it's almost like the formation of a new mind as a result of having the dialogue with another person in an open forum.
Well, and, I think people are testing ideas all the time too. And, one of the thoughts that has kind of, or one of the things that has occurred to me when it comes to ideation, right? It's like, I'm going to start this mastermind. I'm going to create this course or whatever the thing is. Like there's this thing that you want to build. And it kind of starts with this idea. And it's like, there's a couple different approaches, and I see people get stuck in this. I've been stuck in this before. It's like, it's almost like you're playing house with a business idea. It's like, you're just kind of talking about it. You're kind of playing make believe with it, but it's like, there's no actual action that comes with it. And then, like we said this earlier, it's like when you talk to your customers and then you start getting that feedback, like, oh, like there's actually something they want that was completely off from what I thought it was actually going to be.
Right.
And I think that with ideation, I think the thing that you just got to be careful about is kind of getting stuck in that trap of, I don't want to say analysis paralysis, because I don't necessarily think that's what it is. It's almost like idea paralysis, where you're talking too much about things you want to do, but you never actually put it out into the world to get the feedback to figure out if it's even something worth pursuing. Like it may not even be worth pursuing. It may be just something that you think is cool, but that's it. It's just a cool thing to do. And, you wasted a bunch of energy around, pursuing potentially pursuing something that never even had a desire from a market to begin with.
Right.
And, so I think, it's like people that are going through the ideation phase. It's, I almost think it's like shaping your perspective and beliefs. Like when having conversations like this, it's like, I'm trying to, like, there's things I'm doing, it's just not really working. But I can't figure out why the hell it's not working. Like, what am I doing wrong? You're just been like, what the hell am I doing wrong? Like nothing's like, I just keep hitting these roadblocks and I don't know how to get through it. And sometimes it's just like something that somebody says unlocks that thing in you. It's happened to me last, I'll share this really quick story. Cause I think it's important. It was last spring. I went to this event. Are you familiar with Dr. Jeff Spencer by chance? Have you interacted with him?
So. That sounds familiar.
He's I'll send you some of his stuff. He's like a mindset performance coach. And I was out in LA with him last year for an event. And he said something. It was like one statement. It's like all it took just to really change my perspective on how to show up. And it was I don't chase dreams, I answer the call. And that was what he said. I was like, I love that. I was like, and I started I automatically just started reflecting on the past couple years, because I went through a really traumatic exit from that lighting business to the point where I wasn't confident in myself. I was trying different things. I felt like I was just chasing a lot of shit and nothing was ever happening. And when he was answering the call, and then we had, there was a lot of conversation around receptivity and the importance of receptivity. And And it's just like, like I'm just going to be receptive to like what the needs are of people when they come into my world. If there's something that they need that I can help them with, and I get that call, if I get called to show up for somebody, I'm just going to show up for them. I'm not going to
There you go.
overthink where this is going to go. I'm not going to anything. I'm just going to like stop overthinking it. And I'm just like, when I get the call, I'm going to answer it. And that's what it's going to be. There's no chasing all these different opportunities. And that's ultimately like what led me to doing website design, because I kept getting people asking me to build their website. And then like a year and a half went by. And I'm like, crap, I probably should get a website of my own. Like, if I'm getting asked to build websites, I should probably build one of my own. And that's kind of how I got into doing website design. Was I didn't have this dream of being a web designer. And in fact, I'm not even sure if that's even long term where it's going to go. I just know that people called on me to help them with that process and that service. I guess they saw some value in what I was doing, and I just answered it. I didn't overthink it. I didn't try to put a big giant business plan around it. It was just, showing up for people when they needed me. So
I think that kind of sums up our entire hour together here. Is like, just show up.
Yeah.
And show up without any preconceived agenda, just like we did here. I remember actually texting you or emailing you on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, what are we going to talk about?" And you're like, we'll figure it out," kind of thing.
Figure it out.
Right? And which is probably the best way to do that, because if we'd had some preconceived notion, we probably wouldn't have dug down some of the cool rabbit holes we went into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, and you get too much rigidity put around something, and I think it can lead to some unnatural behavior. And if I would have been like, Tracy, we're going to talk about like, I was thinking about that. I was like, maybe we should just like make it about podcasting, because I know you and I come from that space. And
sure.
But I think our conversation in this past hour was really, really freaking cool. I mean, we got 7 people listening now, so I guess some people think what we have to say is pretty interesting.
7 other weirdos out there. I'm good with that.
I know, right? So it's I think if it was just kind of solely around podcasting, I think we would still had a good conversation. But
sure.
But I do think that there were some things uncovered here that were like, especially like when it comes to like the connections that you have with people, the vibes, being aware, receptive. That stuff's not, I don't feel like that stuff's talked about enough.
It's not. I think it's assumed a lot.
You
know, oh, well, you have a podcast. You know all these people. Well, I know a lot of people, but a lot of them don't come on my show.
Yeah.
And Jake hasn't been on my show in forever. Right. And
I know.
I chat with him.
Man.
There was a period that we were chatting like every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Right before I moved up here, and and here we are again. So
I'd love to. I need to get back out there and do more guesting. Are you doing guesting? Any guesting?
I am. I've been started here recently, getting back out there and doing a little more guesting. Now that I got everything kind of situated and nailed down.
I like your setup. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's very Tracy. It's very Tracy.
And that's just it. That's the vibe, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see this and go, what the hell?
Yeah.
You might just move on. And those that like it, well, they'll hang out.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. It's there's been some, I've had some people like, how do you position yourself, and how do you there's like a lot, conversations around like your messaging and being distinct and having kind of your niche figured out and what it is you're talking about. And I think the one thing that's like really overlooked is the fact that it's just like, there's just you. there is you.
Yeah.
You're the only Tracy I know that is Tracy of, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's only one Tracy Brinkman.
Yeah.
And, and there's so much about you as a person that's unique. And it's like with like, yes, I build websites, but there's going to be people who would prefer to just work with me over the next guy just because it's me. And there's a certain vibe, I've got that seat at that table, and somebody chooses that I should be sitting there because there's something about me that needs that presence there, because it's going to work with the vibe of this table here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and it might not be the person you're talking to. Okay, it comes to the conversations. I might come across someone here in a couple of weeks that says, I need someone to do a website, and I get the vibe from them that you two would connect well, then I'm going to do that connection, right? Yeah. Could I build them a website?
Well,
Probably, but right,
and that's
and I,
that's kind of. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no,
off.
go ahead. Go ahead. You're
No,
good.
I was just going to say, like, that's one of the reasons why I want to do more live streams and just be more putting more of like myself out there, like
Yeah.
as a human being, as somebody who has a voice and has energy. And, it's like I've been very active on X. I love X, like just from this, because it's easy to kind of get thoughts out, but it's very one dimensional in terms of like, it's just text, you know what I mean? Yeah. And of course, like they've got, like right now we're streaming live to X. I think that's where the people are watching from, probably from X, but it's like when you actually can like hear a person's voice and you can see their mannerisms and all that energy, it's easier for them to go like, yeah, like that person needs to be sitting at this table.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's hard to get that understanding when all you see of them is just like two-dimensional text and some letters and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to put themselves out there through a live stream, and that can be uncomfortable. And I get that. It's like, play your game, do what works for your unique disposition. But I do think the energy is really important in terms of how you position yourself. So
100%.
Any final words, man? This has been great.
Just be you, man. You know me. That's one of my anchors. It's like, just be you. And if you're the guy that talks like this all the time, you know what? I know a lot of people that would connect with that kind of energy. And if you're the crazy zany kind of person, I know a lot of people that would connect to that kind of energy too. And you'll never find them if you try to be somebody else, right? Just be you.
Yeah, that's it. I know it's a simple concept, but it does work. People pick up on your energy, and excuse me. Right now, my energy is kind of sick because I've been coughing and burping through this live stream. So I apologize for anybody watching, but
Jake's just being himself.
Just being myself. This is me. I promise I won't do that at a client meeting, though. So if you ever decide to put me in touch with a client, I will be professional. Promise. Okay, cool. Well, definitely some good final thoughts there. I don't have any final words. If I did, I would say it, other than just, be yourself, and just understand that you are unique. And enjoyed anybody watching. Thank you for being here. Tracy, how can people connect with you?
Hey, obviously, check out the podcast, The Dark Horse Entrepreneur. We're on all the platforms. You want to see more about what it is I do, go to darkhorseschooling.com. Look me up on X or on Facebook. I'm pretty active there, and LinkedIn. So
darkhorseschooling.com. Let's see here. There it is. See, look at Dark Horse. I'm getting I'm using the technology the way it's intended to be used. So we got it right there, scrolling across the bottom. darkhorseschooling.com. Tracy, appreciate you being on here.
Appreciate you
being my guinea pig. I knew it wouldn't be a problem getting you on a live stream, but appreciate you being my guinea pig for this first one. So
anytime, brother.
all right.
Right.
Boom.